everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to discuss light source, where it comes from, how to figure out where it's coming from, and where we are going to place our highlights and our shadows dependent upon where the light is coming from. Now this video is going to be a demonstration video on this worksheet that I created, and then I am going to bring this lesson to a coloring book and show you exactly how to determine on a coloring page where your light source is coming from and where to place your highlights and your shadows in a coloring book or on an object in a coloring book. This is what we're going to do today, so if you are interested in seeing this, go ahead and stick around. It's going to be a really fun video and I think you'll get a lot out of it. If you enjoy videos like this, please do make sure you subscribe and turn your bell notifications on. If you enjoy this video, please do make sure you give it a thumbs up because that really helps my channel to grow. If you check the description box below, you will find links down there for my email list as well as my Facebook group, and also a link to join me on Patreon if you would like to support me over there. And when you join my email list, you will receive back in your email completely for free a color swatching chart where you can swatch all of your beautiful colored pencils. Let's go ahead and get into this video. You all know the first thing I always do is I share with you the Prismacolor colors that I'm using from my set. I've got Cloud Blue, which of course is going to be my highlight color. It's a beautiful blue color. I've got my favorite color to use for shadows, whether I'm using blue or any other color, and that's my indigo blue. And I've got my Blue Lake, which is kind of a really gorgeous type of bright, still bright, but mid-tone color. So we are going to start over here on this side in this circle. And if you look at this one, hopefully you guys can see this circle. I wanted to make them fairly light on this worksheet so that when I'm laying the colors down, I don't have a massive black line on my spears because I want them to actually look like a spear when I'm done, and I want to be able to show you where you would lay the shadows and the highlights dependent upon where the light is coming from. So here we have our little sun up here, so I'm using that as my little example of my light. Of course, light could be anything. It could be coming from an actual light inside a room, or it could come from the sunshine. If you're outside, it could be indoors and the sunshine could be reflecting inside through your window. Just like right now, I'm sitting right by a window and I like to use that as a really good light source for my videos when I'm creating these videos for all of you. But then I still have lights on all sides of me. And the reason I do that is because I want light on both sides so that when I'm filming, I don't end up with any cast shadows. Let's go ahead and look at this spear here. So if we look at this one here, we can see that the light is coming from over here, which it would be the upper left-hand corner. So we would imagine the light coming down like this onto the spear. And you can see that I've got my arrow here showing us exactly where the sun would be coming down onto whatever the object is that you're coloring. So this is going to be our highlight area. So if this is our highlight area, then the shadows are going to be cast down here in this area. So let's go ahead and fill this in. One thing that is very important to know is that if your light from whatever source it is coming from, say it is the sun, and so of course the sun is up much higher into the sky, and then dependent upon the object that you're coloring, like if I was coloring a tree, the tree is going to be closer to the sun. So if the tree is closer to the sun, it is going to have a much bigger highlighted area. Now, if I was coloring an object on a page and my source was the sun, and it is much further away from where the sun is, say that I was coloring grass on the ground, it is going to have a much smaller highlighted area because the sun is further away. I decided to bring in another color just to make this lesson a little bit easier, because I decided I wanted to use my indigo to show you something else. I want to show you where the actual cast shadow is. So we're going to use our Copenhagen blue to show you where the actual shadow would be on the spear. So this is going to be where our shadowed area would be. And so your mid-tone is going to kind of just mix in with this. And these two colors look really good together. And as I come up higher, I'm just kind of lightening up on my pencil, because you guys know I really love to use the white of the paper. I do that all of the time, and I show you guys in all of my videos how important it is to use the white of the paper. So let's come in here and add a little bit more of our shadow. And then I'm going to come up in here, and we're imagining that the highlighted area is coming from the sunshine, because our light source is much further away. We will have a lesser highlighted area. So I'm just going to pull this in just a little bit more. I'm doing this just to make sure that the colors really blend in. And now I'm going to kind of just pull this up and through and get a really good blend here. And as you can see, I am leaving a little bit of the white of the paper, and I'm just going over here on the outside part of it. And then, of course, this is not necessarily a blending tutorial, but you could go through and make your spear look very realistic by just pulling all of the colors together and burnishing them out. But of course, in this video, I just really want to show you guys how to determine where to lay your highlights and your shadows, dependent upon where your light source is coming from. So there is my first spear, and I want to show you, this is what I'm going to use my indigo blue for. Now, if the sun is coming from up here and it is reflecting down right here in this area, we are going to have a cast shadow down at the bottom of this spear. So if we are coming from this direction, and we can see that most of our shadowed area in our spear is here, we are also going to have a cast shadow in this area here. So of course, you guys know in a lot of my videos, I talk to you about when something is laying closer to the ground, it is going to be darker in that area, so that I can make this look as though it is actually laying on the ground. I'm going to come in here and I'm really going to make it look as though there is actually a shadow here, and this is where it is actually touching the ground. And of course, where it is touching the ground, like where that line is meeting right here, that is where your shadow, your cast shadow, is going to be the greatest. I'm going to come back in here and I am just going to fill this in with my color that I decided to use for my shadows so that you guys can really see what's going on here. And I know I said this wasn't a blending tutorial, and I just really wanted to show you guys about light source and such, but I think it is also very important for y'all to see it as it comes together. And I'm kind of going over this with much harder pressure. And then I'm kind of bringing it up into the other color. I think that was my cloud blue. But to really make it look like it's actually a spear, you would just kind of line the outside here, because this is what is going to give us depth as well. And you can't just have a spear that is laying there that is just completely flat. And you don't want your line to remain flat, so when you come back up here, you're going to have to use your cloud blue to kind of blend this out here. And then again, I'm going to leave this area alone because I really want that to look like it is white. Now, if I wanted to, and I was actually doing this, and I really, really wanted to practice this, I could also come back with my white Prismacolor and I could burnish this out even more. Now remember, when you guys come back with your bright Prismacolor, it is going to leave that kind of white waxy film on top. So you will have to come back, use your darkest color or your actual colors that you're using, and kind of go back over the other areas or all of the areas that you used your white Prismacolor in, because you want to kind of bring them back to life after you've burnished them together and add a little bit more pigment or a couple more layers. So this is our first one. Now let's move on to the next one. So if we look at this one, we've got another circle here and we see our light source coming from the top here. So if our light source is coming from the top and it is reflecting directly down onto our spear, we are going to have our light source coming from a completely other area. We are going to have to color this object to make it look as though the light source is coming from directly on top. So we're going to do it the same as we did the other one, but we are going to imagine on this one that our light source is maybe not necessarily the sun, and say that we are in a room and we've got the light right up on us. Okay, so if the light is right up on us, then when the light is much closer and much brighter, then we are going to have a much bigger highlighted area. So we are going to reflect that in this one. So let's go ahead and start with our, did I ever tell you guys this color was Blue Lake? I don't remember if I told you. So anyways, this color is Blue Lake, but if we've got the sun reflecting straight down, then where's our shadow going to be? Our shadow is going to be actually on the bottom, right in the center. So this is going to be our shadowed area. We're going to imagine that whatever our light source is in this case, that we are in a room and it is probably just a light that we have kind of sitting maybe above us. We're going to have a much larger highlighted area in this one because as the light gets closer, you are providing yourself with more light. Therefore, your highlighted area on your object is going to be bigger. So we are not going to go above this line at all. With our shadow color. So we're going to come back now with our other color we brought in just to add a little bit more shadow so that we've got kind of a variation here. And I'm going to do what I did last time and just kind of go over this line just to really show that we've got that shadow here. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to kind of pull that through with my blue lake. And I do need to come up above this line just a little bit because I've kind of got like a flat line there, and you don't want a flat line. And then of course, like before, I'm going to come around here and just darken up this line so that we've got some color to kind of blend in with our cloud blue when we come back and bring the colors together. Because what you're trying to do is you're really trying to create dimension, because we don't want this to be a circle, we want it to be a sphere. And your objects on your coloring page, you want them to look like they are kind of popping off the page, and that is how you would do this. So a sphere is actually a really perfect example of that, because I do the same thing on my coloring pages when I really want them to stand out. See how it just really intensifies it, and it just really makes it look like it is actually coming up off the page when you kind of just line that area. And again, you have to continually come back and pull those colors through because we don't want flat lines anywhere. I know I like repeat this and repeat this and repeat this and tell you guys all the time, but I've had so many of you comment and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not a flat colorist anymore. I love it. I love that you guys are actually learning from these videos and you're really putting them to good use, because it makes me want to just keep bringing you more videos. And this one has been so highly requested. So I figure, why not just make a worksheet and actually show you guys how to do it. And then the next step in the next video, or the next part of this one, we're going to bring it to a coloring book and we're going to do the same thing in a coloring book. And so I'm going to show you how to transfer this lesson to your actual coloring pages. Okay, so let's come back with our highlight color. And like I told you earlier, we've got this light shining right up on us. So we want to make sure that we've got a really bright highlighted area. So I'm really going to use the white of the paper here in this sphere. And I'm going over this because you guys know I don't want that flat line there. But I'm not going to lay a whole lot of this because I want my highlight to be brighter, because that's what happens when the light is closer. And you guys know how important it is to use the white of the paper. Always let the white of the paper work to your benefit. You see how we have a much bigger highlighted area here? So when your light source is much closer and it's right up on you, it's going to create a much bigger area of light. And then when your light source is much further away from you, it's going to create a smaller area of light. Now, how much light or how bright the light is also makes a huge difference, and these are all things that you guys need to determine when you're coloring. Like, just kind of look at the page and be like, okay, well, where do I think the light source is coming from? What do I think the light source is? How bright is that light source? And is it going to be covering a large area, or is it going to be covering a smaller area like over here in this one? So when I do my tutorials, I like to give you a different example in each one and kind of make it to where, like over here, I would imagine that we're using this as the sunlight. And then so when the sunlight is much further up in the sky and we've got our object here, I would like to imagine that we are still going to have a reflection from the sunlight, but the sunlight is going to make a smaller reflection because that sunlight is not right up on us because it's all the way up in the sky. Okay, now this one, I'm going to come back with my white Prismacolor, and I'm going to work on this one and kind of pull all this through, or pull all of this through with my white Prismacolor so it just kind of looks blended in. Because I do still have kind of a line here, but you guys can see what happens when you come over it with your white Prismacolor. It does kind of lighten everything up. It's burnishing things together, and I probably still don't have enough layers down here, so I'm going to come back and fill in some of that white. Because I really want this to look like a spear. And I want you guys to understand that when you're coloring in your coloring book, if you cover everything and you line and you put the shadows in the right places, oh, that's the wrong color, where they should be, then you are going to get a much different effect. Now see, when I lay this color down here, that is my shadow color, and I pull it up a little higher, I'm kind of creating dimension here. Can you all see that? And then I could come back with my mid-tone and I could pull this through a little bit more. But I want to keep this area here because I'm imagining that I've got a much bigger highlighted area in this one. And so I'm kind of using my mid-tone in a lighter value just to kind of create that effect. So can you see how it is coming all the way down into our spear? And I'm just kind of bringing my cloud blue down into here and going over the whole entire thing. And then if you wanted to kind of bring this color down, you can go into the white area and barely touch it. And this is kind of what I've showed you guys too, where I talk about how every one of your colored pencils has, it is a color, but you can get so many different values from that color. And I'm just trying to get rid of the line that I still see here. And I think that's probably good enough. Let me add a little bit more in here just to kind of make that line go away. And I think that worked. If you guys ever have a hard line that you're just trying to get rid of, you just kind of go over it with the same color in a circular motion. And then if you want to lighten it up, you can come back with your lightest color and just kind of blend all of it out. But look how cool. That just blended it all right out. So see, you kind of got a blending tutorial here too. Another tip and trick. Okay, so if we look at this one, now we need to determine where our cast shadow is going to fall. And so in this one, since our light is coming directly from the top, where do you think your cast shadow is going to fall? Of course, it is going to be right here on the bottom. So I'm going to take my indigo blue and I am going to reflect that on my spear. So if I draw this out here, I really have to use hard pressure to really show where the shadow is, where it is touching the ground. And as I come through, I'm going to take away some of the pressure that is actually on my pencil. Can you see where the cast shadow is in that one now too? Is that so super cool? And you could see it a lot more, I think, in this one because I went in much darker. You could actually see where the spear actually hits the ground. You could actually see right here where it's actually touching the ground. And if I wanted to, I could also come back over here and I could do the same thing and just darken up that area where it is actually touching the ground, where the shadow would fall. Okay, so those are the first two, and we're going to come over here and we are going to do the last one. So the last one, our sunlight or our light source, is up here coming from the corner and reflecting down onto it like this. I'm sure you guys can imagine now after doing the other two where the light source is going to be. Let's imagine that the light source is way far away from our object, or we have a light source that is very dim. So we are going to make this one look as though our light source is just extremely dim, but it is still reflecting onto our spear. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start with my mid-tone color, and because the light is extremely dim, we can see that it is going to hit right over here by looking at my arrow. And so I am going to come up even higher with my blue lake, which is, I guess, one of my mid-tone colors now since I picked up another color. But I'm going to try not to make the mistake again of pushing too hard and making this line too much. Okay, so let's just come in here and color in all this area. And then of course, like I did in the other ones, I came around here on the top of the spear because we have to make it look like it is three-dimensional. And I'm going to come up here just like I did earlier in the other one, and I am going to go in a circular motion so that this line doesn't look flat. And like I said, I want a much lighter or a much less of a highlight area. So I am going to come in here, and because I want much less of a highlight area, the area that I keep white is going to be very small. So I've got just a teeny tiny little area here that I kept white. Now remember, we don't have a whole lot of light reflecting upon this one because maybe we're sitting in a room and it's later at night and we are just relaxing, kind of getting ready for bed, and so we don't want a whole lot of light in our area. We're sitting in a recliner, maybe you're coloring or reading a book, and so maybe you are actually coloring, or imagine coloring that book, or imagine that book in your lap, and imagine that this is that book, and you've got that light right next to you, and it's enough to help you kind of read that book, or it's enough to put enough of a reflection onto your coloring book to where you can see it and just kind of relax and color, but it's not too much. It's not like a huge amount of light that is really just going to wake you up because it's late at night. So this is the amount of light that is going to be coloring that, or going to be covering that object on our coloring page. So let me come in with my next color, which is my Copenhagen blue. I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and of course, because I've got much less of a highlighted area, I am going to have much more of a shadowed area. So I'm going to use my Copenhagen blue, and I am going to color in a lot of the bottom area of my spear. And I'm going to come up a little bit higher than before, because if you have less of a highlight, then of course you are going to have more of a shadowed area. But you still want your shadowed area to be able to have different values. So I'm going to come back up here with my blue lake, and I'm going to pull that color through. And I think I am going to, yeah, come down here and just really make this, give this, you know, more depth down here by just making it a much more pronounced line. So then I'm going to come back again with my blue lake, and I'm going to use harder pressure and kind of pull all of this through. And I'm going to go over this little line here again so that it is much less flat. And now I'm going to come back with my cloud blue, and I'm going to try to just kind of bring all these colors together, still leaving that very little area, like a little teeny tiny circle of white where I used the white of my paper. Now to make it look more like a spear, you really want to emphasize the edges. Now see how that just kind of made it look like it is actually popping off the page? And I'm using my indigo blue to do this. And then I'm going to come back in here with my white. And I'm going to kind of rub a little bit of that out so that it doesn't look flat. And I'm going to try to blend some of this in all the way into that very small white area where I used the white of the paper and didn't lay any color. And let's come through and just kind of bring all of this together. And do you see how it's kind of changing the color again when I come over it with my white? So if you want to enhance those areas, I'm not going to burnish it all the way out, but if you want to come back and intensify some of those areas where you kind of took some of the color out, you would just come back over it again. Okay, so now let's talk about, I'm just trying to actually make this a little bit darker because we want this one to have a lot less reflective area. So can you see now that we've got a lot less reflective area on this one? And if I wanted to make it look much more three-dimensional, I could come back and I could just really come in and make sure that I have a lot more color in the areas where I want it to look as though it is three-dimensional. So let's look at this one now. So if the sun is, or not, it's not necessarily the sun in this case. It is, we're sitting in a room, like I said, and so we've got a light right up next to us, and we're like coloring or reading a book, and it's late at night, so we don't have a big, huge light source, but we have just enough to be able to see whatever it is that we're doing. So if you were coloring on a coloring page, and this was an object on a coloring page, and you were coloring a person sitting in a chair, and they kind of had a coloring book or a book in their lap, and they've got their light source coming from over here down onto their book, this is exactly how you would color. And I am, remember, going to bring some of this to a coloring book. I just have to find the perfect page to color to bring this to a coloring book for y'all. So if this is what was going on, where do you think our cast shadow is going to be on this one? Here over in this one, it was over here to the side because it was coming from the upper corner and kind of reflecting down on this way, or down this direction. And then here it was coming from the center. So we've got our cast shadow in the center. Now on this one, we have our highlight coming from this upper right hand corner, and it is reflecting down this direction onto our sphere, or our object that we're coloring on our coloring page. So with that being said, our shadow, and let me make sure I have the right color this time, but our shadow is going to be over here to this side. And I think, yes, you have to really look at where you've got your highlight starting. So I think I'm going to start my shadow right about here. I'm just imagining like the light coming just like this. So if I think about, or I imagine I've got a line going just like this, I'm starting my cast shadow actually right here. Okay, so just like before, where we have our spear laying on to the ground, or actually touching the ground, that area is going to be much darker. I think I need to turn just a little bit this way. But this is where it is actually touching, all right here in this area, because our highlight is here and we are going to come down directly below it. So you want to add more pressure behind your pencil up here in this area where we can see that it is actually touching the ground. And we want that area to be much darker, and then we want to kind of pull the pressure up off our pencil as we come a little further away. So that completes our lesson on our light source and where to place your highlights and your shadows, and how to handle cast shadows. And I hope that you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. I enjoyed doing this, and I really think that this will be helpful to a lot of you. I know that you guys were requesting this video and requesting this video and requesting this video, and it just took me some time to get it, and I just thought it would be a great idea to do this today, and I'm glad I did because it was a lot of fun. So if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn your bell notifications on. And everything that you see me use in this video will be down in the description box below. Please do join my Facebook group. If you want to, you could sign up for my email list. All the links are down there in the description box. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Happy coloring. Bye.